joke, let's go! Thank you guys so much for the fucking monstrous support on my last video. Be sure to type words in that box and post them to be featured in my next one, and a much needed thanks to my lovely patrons Dubber_, Stin, Dotman, Jesse, Brian, Angel, and the Foe 3. Alrighty fellas, enjoy the video. With Spyro on quite the slippery slope in its past 2 entries and Crash Bandicoot doing fine. Just fine. I seriously don't have a joke, it's just been fine. The 2 highly regarded mascots desperately needed a pick-me-up, and since things weren't going so well on home consoles, the hopeful pick-me-up would come literally in the way of Nintendo's famous portable console, the Game Boy Advance. And fuck it, I wasn't planning on doing this as a versus video, but you guys enjoyed the first one so much that I'm saying screw it. Crash on the Game Boy versus Spyro on the Game Boy, which could adapt to the limitations of the handheld device and still make things work. But for those of you who didn't catch my last versus video on Walk versus ETD, here is quite the simple criteria in which this shit is gonna go down. First, we got the premise, so you know what the hell is going on, followed by the good, the bad, the endings, and henceforth, my final thoughts. I mean, honestly, why am I wasting my time? This is Crash flipping Bandicoot. We know the deal by now. Cortex's micro penis is showing. Where? So to compensate, he shrinks the earth down to the size of a walnut to flex his tiny wang. So you have to get the crystals, the gems, colored gems, take secret routes, and complete time trials to set the earth back to normal, even though Cortex could literally stop Crash just by Snow Job. You really got away with titling a level that. Hell yeah. Speaking of titles, I'm going to be referring to this game by its UK title, XS, because the adventure makes absolutely no sense considering the Earth is shrunk, this game is played on a small handheld device, or at least it's intended to be. And of course, XS is also referencing Cortex's so pardon my hippie shit. Okay, so right off the bat, the objective, of course, is to smoothly convert Crash and Spyro from their usual 3D styles into 2D bits, and well, it works really well in Crash's case, as there's already a good chunk of side-scrolling sections in the franchise, like literally every bonus section. So honestly, there's not too much to elaborate on the gameplay front here. It's exactly what you'd expect from Crash, just in 2D. For the most part, Crash controls to my satisfaction. You get many of the familiar power-ups and fan-favorite baddies also return to get bonked. There's familiar environments to explore from the original trilogy, like woods and ruins, icy caves with yeti chases, stinky sewers, space stations, scuba diving, and there's also a new gameplay style where you pilot this jetpack while taking out Cortex's forces from the air, and it's really good. I'd say it's one of my favorite variations of Crash gameplay ever. It's even implemented as a boss battle against Engine, which is pretty fly. I hate myself. Even better than that though, on the yellow colored gem route, you get to fly a motorbike through space and it's super cool. The bonus stages to this point in the franchise are probably the most creative and challenging as well, behind maybe Crash 1's. They become pretty difficult as you progress, which means a good bit of retrying, which also means hearing the same 10-second loop bonus music over and over again. It's enough to send even the most sane individuals to a psych ward. What ain't as cool, however, is how funkily fucked Crash's slide jumping is. It's really the only part of the game I've got a big gripe with. It's like no matter how much you try, and try, and try, you die, and die, and die. It just makes me appreciate all the more how Crash 4 treated jumping physics. Also, because of the limitations of the screen due to how small the Game Boy is, sometimes you have to take Jeff Hardy level leaps of faith and hope you don't die, because there's times where you just don't know what's below you. Most of the time it wasn't really an issue, but it's worth mentioning for sure. What? How didn't I? Oh, what the fuck? In fact, it can sometimes force the developers to get more imaginative with the way they structure some open areas. Did I just mention something positive in the bad section? Oops. Back to bad stuff. The bosses are Engine's good, of course. He's great every single game. The rest of them, not so much. Once you retrieve all the crystals, gems, and relics and take out Cortex, you get a pretty wicked reward. Following his defeat, Cortex is like, "You damn Bandicoot, you destroyed my minimizer stabilizer crystals," even though those are quite clearly colored gems, which I should have, so... Wait, what? The machine then proceeds to malfunction and somehow mushes Cortex and his goons together in this amnesia-ass looking monster, which leads into the secret boss battle, only it's not a traditional boss battle, but in fact a chase level where you utilize your Turbo Run. I swear this thing gets a new name every game. And you have to outrun Mega Mix by scaling along crates, barreling your way through crates, and sometimes purposely at the expense of Aku Aku. It's easily my favorite completion reward for the Crash series to this point. It's very unique, memorable, challenging, it ticks all the boxes. Have I made that pun yet? I'd be really surprised if I haven't made that pun yet. So all things considered, yeah, Crash XS is really solid, and I would absolutely say any Crash fan should give it a try. Deep in the heart of hyperspace, on a piece of meatloaf, or maybe a liver, we find Uka Uka blabbering on about how Cortex always fails and saying how entropy here has been a great asset to the side of evil over the years. I mean, he hasn't really done anything either. He got turned into a baby just shitting and farting like the other knucklehead. Anyway, for some reason, Uka Uka says he trusts Entropy with leading alongside him in universal domination, so Entropy recruits his good buddy N Tranced, the master of hypnotism, to carry out their new scheme. Together, he and Entropy kidnap Crunch and Coco and hypnotize them into becoming evil! They even almost capture Crash, but Aku Aku saves him before he can be completely dragged through the vortex, resulting in a fake Crash being produced on the other side, and I love this. So while once again this game follows the usual format, there are some tweaks made to freshen the formula. First off, yeah, no Cortex. How about that? I don't have anything against the character, I love him. But it's nice to have a fresh plot and not the same Cortex revenge scheme to deal with yet again. Also, for the first time since Crash 1, we're no longer following the warp room layout and are now using an overhead map, which is pretty neat. And while colored gems are still in the game, you now have to find shards of them in specific themed levels rather than just finding them like you normally would. Once you've got all the shards, you can play the colored gem levels at the end of the game to get the full gems, and I don't know, I think that's a pretty cool idea. There's a couple new power-ups, and while they're very situational, especially the rocket jump, they're at least better than the sneak shoes, so a win's a win. But while the super slide doesn't have much use in the normal runs through levels, it honestly made for the most fun I've ever had doing time trials. It becomes so fast-paced, but you still have the perfect level of control over your jumping and all that jazz. So nailing the platforming while whizzing by at Mach 5 is so satisfying. As this is of course the sequel to XS, it is expected that there's going to be more vehicle levels, and while as a whole I'm not a fan of much of what's going on here, the waterboarding levels were a hell of a time where you have to, you know, avoid hitting seagulls, slam into obstacles, and also not get eaten by a fucking megalodon. But they're a lot of fun. A very nice variation on the traditional chase levels Crash is famous for. But then there's another kind of chase level where the thing chasing you, the goddamn sun, is behind the camera, and I don't know, man, the controls here are very slippery. Getting the gem here is a bastard. Trying to aim and shoot at stuff while still trying to go where you want to move to can get pretty annoying as well. Yeah, this game mode was just an absolute dud for me, sadly. The duds keep rolling in with the Atmosphere from Wrath of Cortex making an appearance, and yeah, it's not half as good as it was in that game. Here there's quite a bit of shady camera work at times, and sometimes the controls just don't really work. Like, no matter how slowly I'd try to go down ramps, sometimes I'd still just... Continuing on with some pretty shit in the Arabic levels, you get a magic carpet to fly, and, well, the hitbox on its projectile is quite balls, which can definitely cause you some trouble. Also, not only is the carpet floatier to control, but let's be real, a badass space cycle is much cooler than this piece of haunted Raymore and Flanagan decor. This entire level as a whole, actually, you know what? Yeah, just fuck this level. In the end, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Just grab the fucking rope, Crash. I also hate, yes, I know hate is a strong word and I'm saying it a lot, but it's necessary. I hate how the controls for Crash himself somehow got more unresponsive. Hey, buddy, want to spin over there for me? Well, fuck you too. The spinning also just didn't work here, even though you can literally hear the spinning sound effect. The game just said, nah. Bullshit, man! The tornado spin doesn't work again. The jumping told me to suck an egg here, and I guess in this case the controls were too responsive because I hit R to crouch and just went scoop diddy whoop to my death. I know I have to wait for a carpet to float over so I can cross. Any second now. Okay, whatever, screw it. Oh, come on! And to top it all off, half the bosses in the game can easily be exploited. For Crunch, you just have to stay on the bottom of the screen. For N Tranced, you just have to stay on the top of the screen. The rest are okay, but yeesh, these two are awful. After defeating N Tranced, Entropy retreats, and we never find out what happens to him after that because by this point my save file is at 69% and I cannot disrupt such balance in the universe. Okay, but actually, once you have the respective shards for the green, blue, and red gems, you are then able to play the 3 bonus levels that I mentioned earlier to get the full colored gems. My favorite out of the 3 was definitely the Egyptian red gem level, which is like this waterfall maze. It's a lot of fun. It's one of the most memorable Crash levels for me, for sure. Once you've got the Chaos Emeralds, you take on Entropy in basically a carbon copy of his Crash 3 battle, but in 2D, and it's easy as shit. We win!
Ultimately,
N Tranced brings some interesting new concepts and changes to the table, but as a whole, it is fundamentally worse in the way Crash controls. The carpet doesn't control too great, neither does the atmosphere or Coco in the space levels, so yeah. Controls are definitely the crux of the matter here. It's still a decent game, but XS is just more polished and focused in my opinion, even if it's a bit more generic. So the game begins with Spyro and pals just vibing on the beach, or maybe vibing's putting it nicely because Hunter and Bianca look like they're suppressing screams. Hunter pops up and is like, oh shit, a flying sheep saucer, but oh whoops, it's just a balloon. Fucking idiot. Attached to the balloon is a note Zoe of the fairy world sent explaining how somebody has cast a spell encasing all the fairies in the realm in solid blocks of ice. So we venture off to free the imprisoned fairies. Some levels look nice. God, people are really gonna think I'm just a Spyro hater at this point. Okay, I would just like to remind everyone that Spyro 2 is one of my favorite games ever. Easily the best game in the Spyro trilogy in my opinion. It's better than any of the Crash games, and Crash is my favorite game franchise ever, but with that positivity out of the way, didn't really like Spyro 3, didn't really like Enter the Dragonfly, and yeah, I fucking hate this game. Yes, I do. In fact, I've got so many problems with this game, there is no way I could discuss them in an organized fashion, so prepare yourselves for a shit show. If Spyro goes 0.00002 inches into the water, he drowns. Enemies can hit you with shit off camera, so you have no way to anticipate their attacks, and by the time you're prepared, you're already in Davy Jones' locker. Why couldn't you at least make the camera wide enough so I can see shit like that? Because holding L and looking around every 5 steps is incredibly inconvenient and dull. I'm stuck in a wall. I just bonked myself off the ledge. These jumping physics are fucking horrendous. You are an asshole, and society would be light years ahead of what it is now if your barbarian dumbass wasn't such a detriment to it. What in the goddamn shit? I am not even near you! And I'm quoting this one from my notes. You are a fat bitch. Fatter bitch. I need a map so I know where the hell I've been already and where to go next, because this game makes it pretty confusing how to figure that out. In Spyro 3, Spark sections were pretty inoffensive minigames. Now they just kinda suck, or maybe I just suck, but either way, I don't like them. There are way too many enemies, corridors are far too tight, so you just find yourself running for your life rather than actually combating enemies. And on top of that, as soon as you spawn back in after dying, they're right on your ass and you don't even have a chance to fight back anyway, so just fuck it, right? Speedways actually transitioned their way onto the GBA as well, and they function much like Crash's jetpack levels, and you know what? At the core, they're pretty good. What ruins them, however, is that obstacles you're supposed to destroy for extra time sometimes take forever to spawn in. Like, for fuck's sakes, it's been 40 seconds and you gave me nothing to destroy for extra time. So now I just lost, and it's not fair. And then there's a boss at the end that just flies away the whole time, and it's just bullshit. And you're really making me sound like a complete weenie because I keep bitching about bullshit and stuff not being fair. But at least by this point, I've endured enough that I can at least move along to the next set of levels. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. What are these Sesame Street villains? For fuck's sake, they're gone now. Okay. Disagree. Alright, on to the next set of levels, and the eyesore continues. It all blends together. Then it just gets even worse because the shitty depth perception gets so out of hand here. This level made me so unbe-fucking-leavably angry no amount of words could possibly capture just how horrible the depth perception was here. I know I can't say that word. It was nothing like I've ever seen before. It was absolutely atrocious. Then we go on to another level that's even uglier. The depth perception is just as bad. The enemies are as big of assholes as ever. Then it moved on to the next where this level at least looked nice, but oh dear God in heaven have mercy, there's a fucking egg thief. You have to have light speed reflexes to make your turns at just the right time to keep up with them. And to make things worse, there are a bunch of trees around with huge hitboxes that you will ram into over and over again until Spyro's brain is reduced to a bowl of mammoth cheese. From this point, I legitimately could not will myself to go any further. I could not give less of a shit about these Sesame Street rejects or these stupid fairies. I just stopped. This is by fucking far the worst game I have ever reviewed. At least Enter the Dragonfly could make me laugh at how broken it was. This is just so poorly designed, and even when it is running optimally, the best this game has to offer is the epitome of boring. Do not play this game. I'm just kidding. This is simply my opinion. It's up to you to play it for yourself and form your own opinion. Talos, why am I doing this to myself? Well, anyway, Season of Flame begins with...
What did you just say to me?
I know this is the Gameboy, so we're not lighting the world on fire here with audio presentation, but what in the hell? Oh my god, they sound like Pokemon receiving electroshock therapy. So the actual premise here is that Rhinox once again have screwed shit up and stolen fireflies from the Dragon Realms, meaning things are much colder around here. So cold, in fact, that wildlife and foliage is prospering and water is running freely, but the dragons can only use ice breath. That makes sense. So you have to go around catching the fireflies with your ice breath to restore the Dragon Realms to their original state. Sound familiar? Okay, you know what? There's definitely some highly appreciated improvements here. For starters, the view of the camera is widened a good bit when you move, so it extends in the direction you're walking, so you should experience a lot fewer ambushes. They actually included a map so I could figure out where the hell I've been already and where to go next. There's actual challenges now like there were in the original trilogy, which is great, and there's more hidden sections to keep things interesting, and they remind me of the secret bases you could build in Pokemon Emerald. I didn't die as much from bullshit perception, as well as the addition of Ice Breath. Lightning Breath comes into play, which is nice, and to top it all off, the game just looks more nutritious than it did before. Oh, and Sheila's back. She's fine. Now, while that all sounds fine and dandy, that feels like where the bar should have been set from the get-go in Season of Ice. This game still isn't good. It's at least not dreadful anymore, but now it's just... mediocre? Decent? I mean, the bosses suck, and yeah, it's Ripto and his minions again. Whatever, who cares? I just... you think I care? Yes, 2 Weezer jokes in one video. And while I said depth perception, seriously, take a shot every time I've said that. While that hasn't done me in as much as the last game, it does still happen quite a bit, and that is too many times to be acceptable. And yes, while actual challenges return, that doesn't mean they're all hits, because there are some shits too, like this escort mission where if you walk 4 feet from this loser, he gets scared and runs all the way back to the start. So to beat this thing without any bullshit happening, you have to kill all the enemies in the way ahead of time, and then monotonously follow him to where he needs to go, and it's very boring. Just like Agent 9 sections, which are as whatever can be. So while again this game is a pretty big improvement, in isolation it's still quite so while I was at least willing to finish it this time, I was still only going to meet the bare minimum requirements to make that happen. So I grabbed exactly 75 fireflies and scrambled over to Ripto's place to finally put this grueling endeavor in the dirt. You take on Ripto by using the different breath abilities to penetrate his specific colored card shield, and then you ram your way into him, and then he just blows up. Once you return to the Dragon Realms, you set the fireflies free, everything is saved, and oh Christ, Sparks is a chubby chaser. I mean, isn't it obvious? Crash fucking slaughter Spyro again. At this point, I just don't think Spyro's for me. I don't understand, man. And yes, I know Attack of the Rhinox is still out there for me to try, but I could not care any less about trying. It just looks like it's gonna be more of this same shit. I'm sorry, but I had fun most of the time playing Crash on the GBA, whereas with Spyro, I was either most of the time bored or angry. Every time these two are compared, I can't help but feel like Spyro 2 is like the only thing going in Spyro's favor. Everything else is just like okay to terrible. I'm not reviewing bad games anymore, or at least I wish that were the case, but we've got one more video left in the Crash vs. Spyro marathon, ironically, as Crash and Spyro join forces in its infamous crossover, Crash Purple vs. Spyro Orange. This should be interesting.